All right, folks, we're heading back to the Wife of Bath's tale. And where we stopped was just a recap of where we started and where we stopped from yesterday. They're on their pilgrimage on the outside frame story, and the wife of Bath is telling her story to those around her, like the pardoner and the friar. But she's telling her story to the entire group, and it deals with a knight who lived during the time of fairies until the friars ended up killing all the fairies um, by being the thing that actually preyed young women. So she got her jab in with the friar. But she tells us a story about a knight who has assaulted this woman, this young girl, and for charges of rape, he has been sentenced to death by the king. But the women, including the queen, asked the king to let them take care of this case. So the queen's suggestion to the knight is, I want you to go out. You're going to have a year and 1 day to go as far as you want to go and ask whoever you want to ask, but come back to answer the question, what is it that women want? So if he did not come back, or if he told the wrong answer, then he would still be beheaded. So he goes out and he travels for a year and he asks so many people, and everyone had different ideas, but no one had the answer. And so it had come time for him to come back to the queen. And on his way back, he runs into a bunch of women, like 25 women, just dancing in the middle of the woods. But they disappear, and what's left is this really old, ugly woman. But she tells him that if he'll do whatever she says, that's in his power, that she will tell him what the answer is and that it will save his life, and the queen will agree. And so that's what happens. He goes to court and he tells the queen that what women want is to be treated equally as to their male counterparts. And the queen and the entire court agree. And so he has just saved his life by giving that answer. So, yay, great day. Until the old woman, a witch we can assume, comes up and speaks up at the court and appeals to the queen that she make him keep to his promise, that he would do whatever she said when she said it if it was in his power. And so we stopped at this stanza here. It says, on the word up started the old wife, the one the knight saw sitting on the green, and cried, your mercy, sovereign lady queen. Before the court disperses, do me right. 'Twas I who taught this answer to the knight, for which he swore and pledged his honor to it, that the first thing I asked of him he'd do it, so far as it should lie within his might. Before this court I ask you then, Sir Knight, to keep your word and take me for your wife, for well you know that I have saved your life. If this be false, deny it on your sword. And so that is where we stop. So we're going to continue on here throughout the rest of the Wife of Bath's tale. Alas, he said, old lady, by the Lord, I know indeed that such was my behest, my promise. But for God's love, think of a new request. Take all my goods, but leave my body free. A curse on us, she said, if I agree. I may be foul, I may be poor and old, yet will not choose to be, for all the gold that's bedded in the earth or lies above, less than your wife, nay, than your very love. My love, said he, by heaven, my damnation, alas, that any of my race and station should ever make so foul a misalliance. Yet in the end, his pleading and defiance all went for nothing. He was forced to wed. He takes his ancient wife and goes to bed. Now, peradventure, some may well suspect a lack of care in me, since I neglect to tell of the rejoicing and display made at the feast upon their wedding day. I have but a short answer to let fall. I say there was no joy or feast at all. Nothing but heaviness of heart and sorrow. He married her in private, and on the morrow, and all day long stayed hidden like an owl. It was such torture that his wife looked foul. Great was the anguish churning in his head when he and she were piloted to bed. He wallowed back and forth in desperate style. His ancient wife lay smiling all the while. At last she said, "Bless us! Is this, my dear, how knights and wives get on together here? Are these the laws of good King Arthur's house? Are knights of his all so contemptuous?" And so just some side notes here. When he piloted her to bed, led her to bed, in the Middle Ages, it was customary for the wedding party to escort the bride and groom to their bedchamber. And so he's just miserable the entire time on their way. And so it says, and that he wallowed, rolled around, thrashed about, not having a very good time. I am your own beloved and your wife, and I am she indeed that saved your life. And certainly I never did you wrong. Then why this first night of nights so sad a song? You're carrying on as if you were half-witted. Say, for God's love, what sin I committed? I'll put things right if you will tell me how. Put right, he cried. That never can be now. Nothing can ever be put right again. You're old and so abominably plain, so poor to start with, so low bred to follow. It's little wonder if I twist and wallow. God, that my heart would burst within my breast. Is that, said she, the cause of your unrest? Yes, certainly, he said. And can you wonder? I could set right what you suppose a blunder, that's if I care to in a day or two, if I were shown more courtesy by you. Just now, she said, you spoke of genteel birth, such as descends from ancient wealth and worth. If that's the claim you make for gentlemen, such arrogance is hardly worth a hen. So now she's talking, and she's going to combat all of his arguments and throw back at him the ignorance in what he's saying to her. So the first thing she's saying now is that he was saying she was below her station. And so she's saying, if you're a knight, you're supposed to be a gentleman, and gentlemen do not consider the elements of just being born wealthy, because from ancient wealth, that means that you pretty much just got your money being passed down from generation to generation. And so she's saying, that's not what makes a gentleman, just being born into a family that's wealthy. So she's saying that's arrogant and it's not worth 2 cents. Whoever loves to work for virtuous ends, public and private, and who most intends to do what deeds of gentleness he can, take him to be the greatest gentleman. So someone who wants to do right, being virtuous, and they don't have to brag about it. So it's public and private. And so it's by your deeds, not what you're born into, is what she's saying. Christ wills we take our gentleness from him, not from a wealth of ancestry long dim, though they bequeath their whole establishment, by which we claim to be of high descent. So she's saying a gentleman comes, pretty much it's from what's within and your own good deeds. And again, not being born into it, just being born into the establishment. Our fathers cannot make us a bequest of all those virtues that became them best and earned for them the name of gentlemen. but bade us follow them as best we can. Thus, the wise poet of the Florentines, Dante by name, has written in these lines, for such is the opinion Dante launches. Seldom arises by these slender branches prowess of men, for it is God no less wills us to claim of him our gentleness. For of our parents nothing can we claim, save temporal things, and these may hurt and maim. So, talk about building up the ethos argument, establishing her credibility. She pulls in the world renowned Dante, who was a famous medieval Italian poet. And the quotations in lines 304 to 306 is a paraphrase of the passage in Dante's most famous work, The Divine Comedy. You may know it modern wise as Dante's Inferno. That's one book from the Divine Comedy. I know my son has had a game about Dante's Inferno. So that's who she's referring to here. So this allusion to Dante is adding to credibility, and here's what he is saying, that, it is again the idea that it is not who is born, because in the Divine Comedy, those you find in hell are most often the ones who are supposed to be so perfect on earth. So Dante and Chaucer were very much similar in that they criticized what the church was representing versus their actions, their hypocrisy. But everyone knows this as well as I, for if gentility were implanted by the natural course of lineage down the line, public or private, could it cease to shine in doing the fair work of gentle deed? No vice or villainy could then bear seed. So she's saying, if that was true and it was passed on from generation to generation, then there would never be a mean rich person. Take fire and carry it to the darkest house between this kingdom and the Caucasus, and shut the doors on it and leave it there. It will burn on and will burn as fair as if 10,000 men were there to see, for fire will keep its nature and degree, I can assure you, sir, until it dies. So what she's saying is you can take it in the middle of nowhere, if a region of Western Asia between the Black and Caspian Seas would be the middle of nowhere. And just understanding that even though nobody's going to see, right, it's still going to burn just as bright. So that's what a gentleman would do, is they're going to be good and kind no matter who's watching. They're not doing it just to impress people. But gentleness, as you will recognize, is not annexed in nature to possessions. Men fail in living up to their professions, but fire never ceases to be fire. So she's saying this idea is always there. It's a part of them. It's not, again, them just putting on a show. God knows you'll often find, if you inquire, some lording full of villainy and shame. So lording here is a lord, a nobleman, the upper class. And she's saying you'll often find a lot of the rich doing things they shouldn't be doing. If you would be esteemed for the mere name of having been by birth a gentleman, and stemming from some virtuous noble clan, and do not live yourself by gentle deed, or take your father's noble code and creed, you are no gentleman, though duke or earl. Vice and bad manners are what make a churl a low-class person. All right? Gentility is only the renown for bounty that your fathers handed down, quite foreign to your person, not your own. Gentility must come from God alone. That we are gentle comes to us by grace, and by no means is it bequeathed with place. Reflect now, noble, says Valerius, was Tullius, surnamed Hostilius, who rose from poverty to nobleness. So let's take a look here. Valerius Maximus, a Roman writer of the 1st century AD who compiled a collection of historical anecdotes or stories. All right. And then Tullius and Hostilius, in Roman legend, the third king of the Romans. And then we're going to come just as a prequel here. Boethus, a Christian philosopher of the Dark Ages, and Seneca, an ancient Roman philosopher, writer, teacher, and politician. So a lot of allusions going on in this part. Hang on. All right. So they rose from poverty to nobleness. That's the most important part to understand whether or not you can get their names or their stories, right? The fact that they rose from poverty, but they were noble gentlemen. And read Boethus, Seneca no less. Thus they express themselves and are agreed. Gentle is he that does a gentle deed. And therefore, my dear husband, I conclude that even if my ancestors were rude, yet God on high, and so I hope he will, can grant me grace to live in virtue still. A gentlewoman only when beginning to live in virtue and to shrink from sinning. So she says, I am a gentle person. I am a gentle woman. And that is by the grace of God, not by just being born and not living up to that virtue. As for my poverty, which you reprove, Almighty God himself in whom we move, believe and have our being, chose a life of poverty, and every man or wife, nay, every child can see our heavenly King would never stoop to choose a shameful thing. So his second argument was that she's just poor. So she wasn't from a good background of family and she is poor. So she's addressing that now. So now she's saying, my poverty, which you don't like, you're comparing that when God himself, with Jesus, came and lived in poverty. And so, you're supposed to reject those material things. So she's kind of saying, my poverty is not something that you should be holding against me. No shame in poverty if the heart is gay, as Seneca and all the learned say. He who accepts his poverty unhurt, I'd say, is rich, although he lacked a shirt. But truly poor are they who whine and fret and covet what they cannot hope to get. So she's saying, there's pride in being someone who's come through poverty. It's your perspective. You can be much happier without money than some people who have all that they could ever want in money and are still just wanting more. And he that having nothing covets not is rich, though you may think he is a sot, a fool. So her argument is poor people can be the richest people in the earth when you think about what they cherish, which is not material things. True poverty can find a song to sing. Juvenal says, the ancient Roman satirist, and satire just sort of makes fun of things to prove a point. So, true poverty can find a song to sing. Juvenal says, a pleasant little thing. The poor can dance and sing in the relief of having nothing that will tempt a thief. Though it be hateful, poverty is good, a great incentive to a livelihood, and a great help to our capacity for wisdom if accepted patiently. Poverty is, though wanting in a state, a kind of wealth that none can calumniate. Poverty often, when the heart is lowly, brings one to God and teaches what is holy, gives us knowledge of oneself, and even lends a glass by which to see one's truest friends. And since it's no offense, let me be plain. Do not rebuke my poverty again. So she gets a little snippy there at the end. But again, going through about the idea that some of the happiest people who really appreciate what little they have are actually something more to be proud of than someone who has all the material things. but has no love or compassion for anyone else. And again, she makes that comparison back to God, that poverty is something that is holy and something that keeps people humble and gives them wisdom and patience. So there's all these great things. But she does warn him right here, don't you dare talk about that again. Like, my poverty is something you cannot rebuke. Lastly, you tax me, sir, with being old. Yet even if you never had been told, by ancient books you gentlemen engage yourselves in honor to respect old age. To call an old man a father shows good breeding, and this could be supported from my reading. So she's already addressed the fact that he doesn't think she's from a good breeding, and she's addressed the fact that she is poor. And now she's attacking back for this is a riposte for his reply that she was old. So she's starting out by saying, look at everything you read. If you're wise and you show honor, then you respect those who are older than you. You say I'm old and fouler than a fen, a marsh. You need not fear to be a cuckold then, a husband whose wife is unfaithful. Filth and old age, I'm sure you will agree, are powerful wardens over chastity. Nevertheless, well knowing your delights, I shall fulfill your worldly appetites. So she's saying that, if you have an ugly wife, then you don't have to ever worry about someone else taking me away. You don't have to worry about me cheating on you because nobody's going to want me. But she's saying, while I know this is what you want, she's actually going to make him an offer here. You have two choices. Which one will you try? To have me old and ugly till I die, but still a loyal, true, and humble wife that never will displease you all her life? Or would you rather I were young and pretty and chance your arm what happens in a city where friends will visit you because of me? Yes, and other places too, maybe. So, do you want me to be old and ugly but be the best wife in the world in every other way? Or do you want me to be young and pretty and have people chasing after me all the time? Which would you have? The choice is all your own. The knight thought long, and with a piteous groan, at last he said, with all the care in life, my lady and my love, my dearest wife, I leave the matter to your wise decision. You make the choice yourself. For the provision of what may be agreeable and rich in honor to us both, I don't care which. Whatever pleases you suffices me. All right, so it's kind of like the argument. Where are we going to go eat? I don't know. Where do you want to go eat? I don't know. You choose. Except now, he's saying, well, you want to stay old and ugly and be true, or you want to become, I'm going to leave it up to you. The wise decision to my wife. And he does say, my lady and my love, my dearest wife. And have I won the mastery? Said she, since I'm to choose and rule as I think fit? Certainly, wife, he answered. That's it. Kiss me, she cried. No quarrels. On my oath and word of honor, you shall find me both. That is, both fair and faithful as a wife. May I go howling mad and take my life unless I prove to be as good and true as ever wife was since the world was new. And if tomorrow, when the sun's above, I seem less fair than any lady love, than a queen or empress east or west, do with my life and death as you think best. Cast up the curtain, husband. Look at me. And when indeed the knight had looked to see, lo, she was young and lovely, rich in charms, In ecstasy, he caught her in his arms. His heart went bathing in a bath of blisses and melted in 100,000 kisses. And she responded in the fullest measure with all that could delight or give him pleasure. So, because he gave her the equal, remember that was the thing, we're going to be equals. He gave her the choice. She has decided, oh my, I love you so much. Kiss me. I'm going to let you have the best of both worlds. I'm going to be faithful and true to you. You'll never have to worry about me. And I'm going to be drop dead gorgeous. And so this is where she makes her transformation into this young, beautiful woman, and he just falls to pieces. So they lived ever after to the end in perfect bliss. And may Christ Jesus send us husbands meek and young and fresh in bed, and grace to overbid them when we wed. And, Jesu, hear my prayer. Cut short the lives of those who won't be governed by their wives, and all old, angry niggards of their pence. God send them soon a very pestilence. So we flash back to the outside frame here, as the wife of Bath has wrapping up her story. And so she's giving the moral of it here. So, her wish is all husbands should be meek, as in they should give in to their wives and the wives' demands. And she also says they should be young and fresh in bed. Um, and then the grace to let women kind of take over after they get married. And then she says, then cut short the lives of those who won't be governed by their wives. So remember, the wife of Bath has been married 5 times. She is 5 times a widow. So it's interesting that she says, cut short the lives of those who won't be governed by their wives. We might could infer that maybe her 5 husbands were not willing to be governed. And then she puts back in the money there, and all old angry misers of their pence, their money. And then God send a plague on them, the very pestilence. So she wants those who don't let their wives rule. She wants to cut their lives short. She wants to take all their money, and then she wants to send a plague on them. So, yeah, the wife of Bath.